Welcome back to the Purple Political Breakdown. How's it going? How's your day been? We are back at it again. Ladies and gentlemen, today we got another open panel episode as we are going to talk about the new conversation I believe is kind of sparking up in different aspects of like alternate media. And that is basically trying to define what exactly is like this optimal media space. Because I think for the most part, not including mainstream media, a lot of it has been co-opted by like far right MAGA individuals, or just far right individuals that are kind of adjacent MAGA, and then like far left individuals. And there's like not that other voice that I think probably would be the left of center. I would try to say right of center, but I don't even think they exist right now. So there's a need for a different type of media space, and we're going to basically just talk about what that actually means, how we get there, some examples that may be going on right now. But of course, you know me, I'm your host Riddell, and I have here on me. So how's it going?
I am doing okay. So, quick intro, I'm Dr. Amethyst Herrick. I am a transgender scientist, content creator, and certified hypnotist. You can actually find me on YouTube. Amethyst Herrick is my channel. So,
All right. So I know when we talked about it last time, kind of curious on your perspective to kind of start this out. You grew up more conservative. How did you see, what was your perspective on the development of right wing media, specifically like alternate media, as as it became what it is, like this juggernaut today?
mhm. Gosh, what a great question. Because I was thinking about this when I grew up. I mean, I remember, this was when I don't want to make it sound like I was born in the 1800s, but it goes back far enough. We had all of the television came over airwaves, right? There wasn't even cable TV, and I grew up in Los Angeles. It wasn't like it was, out in the boondocks. So I recall, news was typically very local, even just the Los Angeles news. So it was kind of interesting to watch something like CNN develop because it was originally, you had a cable news network, CNN, right? Um, maybe you don't know what maybe people didn't know what CNN stood for, but the idea that you could have 24/7 news was very novel. But at the same time, what it meant was that it became entertainment as opposed to news. And so I think, what we see today, this is an opinion. I think what we see today, because news has now been perceived more as entertainment than, well, news to keep you aware of what's going on in the world so that you can make your own decisions. I think that's why we see this great polarization in in the media outlets. I don't know if I answered your question. What did you ask me exactly?
Um, how you seen the development of
Hmm.
the rise of the alt-right media juggernaut that it is today?
Right. Okay. Because I do remember, my father, when CNN came on. In fact, actually, he ended up calling it the Clinton News Network because it focused. It was so left wing. I saw the when Fox News became a thing. That was really, in my perception, a response to something like a CNN. Now that being said, I don't even think CNN was all that left leaning. I don't think it's all that, you know, significantly left leaning today. But, I think as you bring a Fox News into the picture, then it really did become like, I mean, yeah, like a variety show, kind of like a 24/7 news variety show. They're having pretty women talking about the news. They're having, except for now, they all have, right, the Republican makeup. Right now, they all have that same makeup. That
Oh
it's kind of
yeah,
a,
they all look like
but
dolls. I'm not gonna lie, and not the good
mm,
ones.
no, no. So, I think it's fascinating. I think as we've polarized over the past 50 years anyway, news has responded because it's become entertainment and not much more. So, yeah, watching Fox News come in was very, very fascinating. Because for what it's worth, I didn't think it was a bad thing initially. I just grew up very conservative. Um, so seeing this come in, but then I started hearing some of the messages, and then you go, "Oh, do we really want this as 24/7 entertainment? This sort of stream of vitriol 24/7 to ramp people up and get them to hate others." So I feel that's what has happened, as this has come together, as the last 50 years of news has brought the changes it has.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I would make the bold claim that news inherently, in terms of like a product on a television screen or your phone, I think for the most part, it doesn't exist. And the reason why I say that is, like, if I kind of dive into like a more of a psychological understanding of human beings, it's impossible to retain their attention for that long when you're just giving them information. And a lot of that information is going to be one of two things: one, boring, or two, something they don't care about. And that's just
Right.
the reality, because even when you go down all these other different type of niches that's supposed to give news, none of them give news. It's all talk shows, entertainment, and that is to give an entertaining info dump that's not really about the information, but it's about capturing your attention, which is also like why people are more fascinated with news that inherently is, well, controversial, bad, terrible. They care about that because it kind of detaches them from their boring, mundane lives at the same time. So they want to kind of get excited about something. Now, of course, this current administration is as exciting as you can get. So I'm sure that also played into it. But I think we quickly found out that news and good information is not important. I think MAGA found that out pretty quickly. And that's why when they kind of converted into like this internet space, they have been 100% on it. They made mainstream media the enemy. They made everybody go like, okay, we're not only more entertaining, but we're truthful than these guys, which is all a lie. And that just captured people's attention and entertainment and gave them the information that they don't really are looking for, but that it's kind of getting embedded into them. That's why I believe like the most optimal way to give people news is short-term news, like quick. This is the information, get out. Like 2 seconds at like
Mhm.
5 to 10 seconds of information, and then get out. But obviously, that's not how everything kind of became what it was. So with that said, once we know that most news is entertainment, the question is, how does the left respond to that? Because a lot of them, they're also boring and not entertaining. So it's trying to find that kind of big nuance to grab people's attention today, which is the challenge for a lot of people on the left.
It's kind of a challenge all over. I mean, I read a book about marketing some years back, because apparently that's just the kind of person I am. But the reason why we have media outlets is not for us to be entertained. It's to serve up ads. They put articles or shows or whatever else because that's the only way they can draw people to look at these advertisements. I mean, the streaming platforms now, I think, are fabulous examples of this. Google's AdSense, or anything else, any other platform that you're on. Yes, sure, they'll publish all of your videos for free, but they do it because they're making money off of it, and ultimately maybe you do, sure. But the purpose of a media company is not us. The purpose of a media company is to serve advertisers. It's almost an afterthought that they make good content, because really just any content works. I bring this up because the way, how do you respond to anything? Ultimately, you can't make a new media outlet unless it's going to be successful. And it's going to be successful because you sell ads, and you're going to sell ads because people think, wow, this is going to be interesting if I go to it. And they think that if you have clickbait titles, or if you keep making stories that are, I mean, you had mentioned news is boring. This is why we get, 10 reasons why Bill Clinton was the worst president ever. Number 3 will shock you.
Yeah.
Right? Because they have to draw you in. So I guess all I wanted to say on that, I mean, how does any media outlet respond? I think the only thing you can do is make more and more outrageous content, which is what I think we're seeing. I mean, for a while in their music, or MTV, they actually played music, right? Music television. They actually played it played music on it. Now they don't, because they're like, well, it doesn't sell ads anymore. Nobody wants to watch music. They're gonna stream it from Spotify. So what else can they do? Anyway, all my point is you have to continue to get more and more sensationalist. Otherwise, media outlets fail. We've seen it a few times. Yahoo, AOL. Those are two big ones. They used to be huge media conglomerates, but they're not selling ads anymore very well because other people have more sensationalist, headlines.
No,
And
for
they're not cool.
sure. I'm still one of those few people that still have a Yahoo email. I just
There you
decided
go.
to. But no, it definitely died, especially AOL. I think that is very potent because the combination of all these things really highlight why we are how we are today. Because there's a realization where it's like, okay, you have to grab their attention. Now try to grab their attention 24/7. Well, and then for a fact that the best way to advertise to people is constantly showing it to them consistently.
Right.
Then you're gonna have to put things in there to keep their attention, and that's when you get exactly what you said: the controversial, the sensationalization, and the controversy, the clickbait, all that stuff. And then knowing that is the strategy, and so you might get some news here and there, where an old person can go up to their daughter or go up to a friend and go like, did you hear about what happened in Ohio? Like, they might get some information, but when we know this, and for the most part, a lot of these people are not going to fact check any of this. They're just going to be, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think that's why, even though I hate MAGA, you got to give them credit because they realize, oh, I just got to be this way, and I can monetize from it, and I can push political messaging, and then I have the perfect politician that will constantly keep them interested and engaged in Donald Trump. Or it doesn't matter if he's a bad politician. He's just entertaining to people. Like, how many times have I heard, oh, well, he's just funny. And I'm like, bro, come on. He's funny in my country. Like, I don't care if he's funny or not. So that's how they were able to dominate. They realized all these factors. They realized people won't fact check, so they will just lie and lie and lie and lie, entertain, lie, and give them the news, quote unquote. So we know that is the case. We know that is the current way things are, and now there's a battle to it. And I guess before we touch into like what should we do, we also have to talk about that there's another section, not as big, but definitely as radical, with like the far left and how they're kind of pushing a lot of like very socialist, very big, wokey, what people call them woke. They used to call them social justice warrior news content and media apparatus as well. What do you think about those guys and like their impact on the media landscape?
Oh, interesting question. Something I realized recently, by the way, is that probably social justice warrior applies pretty well to me. I didn't realize that until relatively recently, but I think that that's become sort of the direction I've gone. I think that I think that the best I see this primarily when you bring up social justice warriors. I see you get these people. I'm sorry, I'll swear I'll finish a sentence. They overwhelm you with things. They go, look at this. Here's a country, and they don't have this, but they do have prostitution, but they don't have this, and that's because of this, and the children are dying, and then you've got the water, and you end up, you just go, oh my gosh, let me just give you money so you'll shut up. I mean, I think that happens often. I think that's one of a very potent technique. I think that's a great way to get somebody to stop listening to your news and just go, well, they must know what they're talking about, right? I mean, because you get overwhelmed. So I think we see this on both sides, but I think actually the social justice warrior type content, I'm talking earlier stuff, I think that was exactly what they shot for, because they would package everything in one thing. We're breaking the environment, and then trees are dying, and then you've got bears, and then there are penguins who are falling off the polar because you've got a hole in the stratosphere, and the whole thing's just going to fall apart. And then tomorrow you'll be lucky if you wake up. Please donate now. Here's a 970 number or whatever those were. Can't think what those were, but so anyway, that's what I've seen. That's what I've seen. Do you agree with that? That overwhelm becomes sort of a
So
tool?
I do think there's two parts to it. And I agree with that aspect in terms of the overwhelming nature of them, because they're so like invested into what they're doing, and they believe they are so morally correct in these situations. And based off like the direct, very clear definition of like what it means to be a social justice warrior or what it meant to be woke, then I'll be like, I probably am those stuff, but the current
Right.
label of those things is so negative, and in part due to obviously certain messaging from the right. But I also think there's a lot of self responsibility on why people think that you guys are just annoying. You guys are
Yeah.
just trying to police everybody. The whole thing, the cancel culture stuff that everybody hated. And then obviously there needs to be a realization that yes, you want to fight for like minorities and marginalized groups, which is very valuable. But if you demonize the majority of the population, which tend to be white people, specifically white men, that's why a lot of them are just turning MAGA. And then we have that situation. So the thing is, they are overwhelming with information, and it's hard to really ground, because a lot of this is really, a lot of people can't understand how messed up things are beyond their current like circle, but also the
Right.
aspect of if you're not with us, you're against us, and that kind of turns a lot of people off from that.
It does. I loved you used the word demonization or demonize, and I agree. I think that's what we see. I mean, I want to say all over the place. There's no doubt that the white male, the white male has taken a whole lot of crap from the social justice warrior type people. Uh, and at the same time, like let's look at some of the MAGA techniques. I mean, Trump had all of the stuff that he did in like the last maybe 6 weeks of the campaign demonized 1% of the population,
Hmm.
10% of the population, the queer community, the transgender community, maybe even non-binary people. Demonization is I think a very, very powerful tool because of exactly what you said. If you're not with us, you must be against us. And it's really great to be able to say, well, that person's our enemy, just don't vote for them because in some way they're evil. Christianity did that before MAGA. I mean, I think MAGA's just kind of picked it up, or really maybe just morphed into it. But
Yeah.
the religious right, I guess, turned into the whole MAGA thing. But yeah, demonization, demonizing people. Because I mean, I guess, I mean, you have to have seen in some MAGA stuff, they demonize you. They demonize me, black men, transgender women. Right. What's wrong with us? Because we're different. Because we're not white men, I guess. But there's that too. But do
No,
you,
for sure. I would
do you
say
feel that?
they have. Oh no, 100%. The
Okay.
when I'm pretty objective with it, like obviously, especially with the stuff regarding DEI, where they think it's all just like racist, apparently, even though that's all a lie.
Right. Right.
But I feel most bad for people, for like immigrants in particular, because they have framed everything wrong with the country is because of immigrants. Is basically the framing, and now we got everything that's going on with ICE, and we got politicians saying, "Oh man, I love it when I see them like get these immigrants and lock them up." I'm like, okay, bro, like what are we doing?
The alligator Alcatraz thing and all that.
Yeah, I just
Hey.
what are we doing? It's
Mm.
insane. And honestly, again, I trust me, I hate giving MAGA credit. I really do. But I wonder if they saw, because even though the portion of like the far left, the best way to categorize that was minute. Most people did not agree with how they handle things. They might advocate for their cause, but sometimes not how they act all the time. But there's a realization that they had a small but strong coalition. So, in combination with all of the factors that I elicited and how mainstream media captured people, then I wouldn't be surprised if they looked at, oh, I see what they're doing. Well, now we can do that. And then even larger scale with the majority of the population that y'all just demonized, which is white people. Then at that point, they capitalize in the most effective, hate it, but the most effective means to inform people, coalesce people, entertain people, and get people believing you are the side that is correct and morally good. So they just created like this whole structure of like the worst tactics to manipulate people, but they've mastered it. They've mastered it.
It works great, obviously. I mean, and you can see in some of the, Fox News originally said, what was their thing? Fair and balanced. Was that their was that their
I have
slogan?
no idea. I'd never watched
Okay,
Fox News back in the day.
possibly good on you, but I just they've tried to, many of the conservative media outlets try to pitch it like that they go, well, these other people, they're only going to give you one side of the story. We're going to give you both sides because we're fair, we're balanced. You have Trump's social media network, right? Truth Social.
Yeah.
Truth Social. How much truth is on that network? Probably not a lot.
Yeah.
But the labeling was great. So I got to agree with you. I mean, MAGA's doing a great job of marketing, packaging and marketing. You made an excellent point too, that the pretty much anything left of center has been characterized as just anti-white male. Let me say that. Because when you do that, you're right. You can just sort of say, look, these people hate everybody. We're the United States. We are white men, right? This is us. We're all about white men. George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, were these people non-binary? No. Were these people social justice warriors? No. So yeah, it attacks, the very foundation of the country. But what's crazy is that the country was based on freedom, and this idea that some people should not have the freedoms that other people do is ridiculous. But we don't look beyond that. I wanted to follow up on something else that you had said too, not looking beyond it. You had said most people aren't going to fact check. I think we could go one further. I don't think most people read the articles. I
No,
think a
no.
lot of people, yeah, they'll look at the headline and that's enough. And what's funny is that oftentimes these headlines, they're not set up, they don't actually tell the story. This is, they'll say, Biden fell down, broke a hip, something like that. And you go, oh my God, Biden fell down and broke a hip. I better read this. If you read it, then they go, oh, well, it turns out that, Biden was getting on a plane slipped a little bit, could have broken a hip, but that's not what the headline says.
Yeah.
So, there's another tactic, there's another tool just to go, well, listen, we're going to give you misinformation in bite-sized formats. Because, like you said, the news is boring. So I'm curious. Now let me ask you a question too. What do you think is the proper use for the news? Do we need global 24/7 news networks? Does it make sense for humans to get that much information?
Well, I've spoken before with a past podcast guest, and we talked about what changed in society, and there's so many different
Mm,
factors. One thing that I brought up is that with the addition of social media and the internet, although I do think for the most part it's been a net positive, there there's a realization when innovation and tools are implemented, they do not consider the potential consequences. And one of the
sure.
biggest consequences for these tools in particular, and we're still struggling with understanding how to use it because the country as a whole, like society as a whole, has never tried to teach people how to use these technologies, is that people are getting fed so much information, but 98% of the people can't contextualize what they are viewing. So
Yes.
with the mass amount of information that they're getting, they are trying to create reasonable solutions and answers based off their limited knowledge and perspective. And that's how we get conspiracy theories. Like if it's the what's that allegory, the one with the cave?
The one with the
Um
cave.
the shadows in the cave one. It's a very popular one. People probably know what I'm talking about, but it's the entire idea that there's two people who are inside a cave the entire time facing the wall, and then their entire lives, the shadows become their reality. And that's the kind of same situation. Like those shadows become your reality because your perspective is so limited. Then
Mm,
imagine getting all this crazy information that's fit into you. You're gonna think X, Y, and Z. You're gonna think that, oh, this shadow is actually God that created this because all you know is this shadow. So that is the biggest problem. People are not truly taught how to engage with all this information in their internet. I don't think it's wise to go back now because everybody thinks that the government hiding everything. Um,
right.
but we just gotta adapt, and that's why one of the solutions that I advocate for, that's a link in my podcast description for every episode, is a platform called Informed. There's a couple media platforms that I advocate for, but these people, all they do is send a text message to you every morning on a weekday, and just 5 quick bullet points of
Mm.
what is going on, objective, nuanced, quick. You get your information, you get out. Quick information, I think, at this point. Quick, simple, efficient is the best way to inform people at this point.
I agree with you. Because at this point, hmm, when television was first invented, or was first popularized, which, by the way, everybody, I'm not that old, but just to state that, but like the Vietnam War, right? Vietnam was the first war that people saw pictures of, like live footage of wars. And I think that made a big difference because they saw some of the atrocities. And so now you've got hippies, some of those original social justice warriors. You saw the hippies rebelling against that. It was, we don't want this, talking to Lyndon Johnson, right? Hey LBJ. But I think once we moved beyond a certain point, you're right, there's just too much of a fire hose. It's one thing to take in information about one event, a war, which was a lot of information, no doubt. But when you get even just 30 years later, 25 years later, you're looking at the original Iraq war, the Desert Storm era stuff. It's funny, we stopped seeing atrocities. What was presented, and I'm not saying I want to see atrocities on the internet, don't misunderstand me, but we didn't see atrocities. What we saw were portrayed as victories. Look, the white man came in and made everything good again. We're a victory. It's a victory. So I think, as well as there being a fire hose, I think that we do skew a whole lot of information in a way that just serves a more, I mean, a much like a global kind of narrative, and not to demonize white men much, but there has been sort of a patriarchy that's existed for hundreds of years now, and that narrative wants to perpetuate itself. So anyway, I think it's two things. There's a global narrative, as well as just the volume of information that we're getting. One of the things that I like is actually social media, if you can believe it. Twitter was not great for this, but if you look on Blue Sky, there are a lot of people who now just call themselves independent journalists, and they say, here's something that happened in Dubuque, Iowa. And if you're in Dubuque, Iowa, maybe you'll care about this. But if you don't, maybe you'll see it and you'll go, well, that's interesting. That's one point, some interesting point in a maybe a longer range type trend. But that we're seeing more local type news, I mean, in particular on Blue Sky, I think is important, because I don't think that every issue takes place at the global level. Not every issue requires Donald Trump to come to swoop in like Superman, like an orange Superman,
Yeah.
to fix. Instead, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to teach people to look more locally first. What's going on near you? Don't worry about what's going on in the state over just yet. What's going on near you? And is there something that you would want to change? Can I ask you another question kind of related?
Yeah, go for it.
I think what we're seeing, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I think also what we're seeing when you look at news being the way it is now, the media outlets being the way they are now, I think that's also helped people get turned off from politics. You don't see a lot of people who want to go into politics anymore. And the people who do are the people who want power.
Yeah.
Those are the people you don't want to give power to. Do you think there's a connection there? What do you see?
I do think a lot of things are becoming much more politicized, to the point where like everything that someone is doing can be related to a political ideology or party. I mean, the perfect example with that is the whole Sydney Sweeney thing, because she did an ad and it said she had good genes. I'm like, so what? I don't care. But everybody just started going crazy, researching, oh, she's Republican, all that. And I still don't care. But it just became a huge thing that, okay, yeah, I am. I think Donald Trump is a very unique person where it's like when you support him and you're knowledgeable, then I question you because of who this guy is. But for the most part, most people don't follow politics that closely. So that's why I'm like, I don't think it should ever be to the point where everybody who supports one side or the other should get torn down to shreds. I think it's a waste of time. And I do think it creates this whole idea that politics is just like terrible. It's just a terrible thing. And to an extent, you could say that. I think for the most part, people are becoming blackpilled and turned off with all the politics that's going on. But more now than ever, people shouldn't be, because we can't allow like MAGA to kind of do whatever they want.
Right.
But I also think there is a section of people that, and this is again part of a conversation I had before, the chaos is breeding not new hope, but new life in the idea that because this happened, this should wake us up that we need to change how we're doing things. And I do think that is currently happening, which is why these conversations have more value than ever. Yeah, MAGA's cooked, and the far left played a part in why everybody who looks at a Democrat thinks that all of them hate white men, because of it. So now we got to create a new apparatus. No more cancel culture, no more woke stuff, no more fascism, no more. If you think Palestine should get a state, or you think they're getting you know railroaded by Israel, that's perfectly fine. That doesn't mean that we call for people to kill Jewish kids. That's not what it means. Like, we can have honest, very fair, very valuable conversation that is separate from these two radical ideologies. And I think people are realizing that is possible. And I also think that the average person's getting tired of the bullshit from both sides too. So they actually want that as well.
You know, a thought occurred to me too, as you said that, because you said that the news should be disconnected from radical ideologies. The news is just occurrences. It's not necessarily confirming or denying an ideology. I mean, like, if you have like, let's say, I remember when Katrina happened, Hurricane Katrina, right? There was a huge backlash that the government didn't respond quickly enough, which I'm not saying they did. The thing was that there were people who turned it into a political event. There's some things that are political events. The terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001, that was a political event. But then there are things that aren't. And I think what's really dangerous is when you have somebody who wants to stick it into a narrative, who wants to say, oh, look, and here's another hurricane. This is because the MAGA people won't let us have, got us out of all the climate, the world climate. Oh my gosh, I'm not remembering the name of it. Was it the World Climate Council? World Climate Council? Is that it? WCC? Anyway.
I'm being honest. I know what you're talking about. I don't remember what it's called. The organization.
So Trump pulled us out of various things, and I guarantee, like a hurricane will happen, some natural disaster will happen. Well, how about this? How about flooding occurring in Texas, and girls dying? Immediately, people were saying, "Well, this was the political narrative. You see, that's what happens when you're conservative.
I mean,
you kill."
that did happen.
Kids.
People, when the floods happened in Texas, people were looking at Trump because of how he cut so much workers and aid from the weather department, and then also how he cuts FEMA funding as well. So yeah, that actually already has been happening for sure.
And that's an interpretation. That's not news. That's the interpretation on top of the news. The news was just that it was flooding down in Texas and all the telephone lines were down. You didn't like my Stevie Ray Vaughan quote there? Didn't land? All right, I'll move on.
Oh yeah, I don't know who that is. So yeah,
that's fine.
Work on me.
All right. The news was just that there was a flood, and that there was obviously damage, and that there were casualties, which was horrible, horrible, horrible. But we want to turn it into a narrative. Well, sorry, they're both sides want to turn it into a narrative, and it doesn't always fit. I do agree. I mean, after all the Doge cuts, there were cuts to the National Weather Service. You're right, there were cuts to FEMA. There were a lot of cuts that did affect the response to this flood. But that flood would have happened regardless of whether or not we were prepared, regardless of whether or not Elon Musk was ever born, regardless if Donald Trump had not been elected. It would have occurred. The aftermath is where we start trying to turn these into political messages, and I think that's mostly what I want to say. There is just that news is news is events. Is it necessarily part of some conspiracy theory, as you alluded to earlier, by the conservatives or by the far left? Probably, I would imagine 3 times out of 4, no. But we want to put it into it. So what do you think on that? I mean, is it narrative, or is it?
I mean, at this point, there is a Fox News is all narrative at this. I don't. Fox News, the entire thing is narrative. Like, they are.
Yes.
They do not care about facts anymore. With that said, I mean, I do think like MAGA did a good job in making everybody hate media, but I mean, there's still good mainstream media that gives like information, but at the end of the day, they still have to sell. So of course, they're going to put out the controversial stuff mostly, and you're never going to hear about the good thing that is happening because that doesn't sell at all.
Right.
But I also agree with the aspect of not people on both sides making everything a political thing. And I was very critical when this one content creator, Destiny, made a joke. And I'll be honest, I like South Park. I love jokes, but the joke in this situation, especially involving kids, I just thought had no value. And I just think that when a situation like this occurs, if you want to be critical, fine, but energy focus should always be helping the people first, and that should take priority. And I do think that can showcase a lot about what your side represents if you make that your priority in the first place. So we kind of losing the plot a little bit when it comes to politics. And at the end of the day, the government, politics, all of that, the reason why they exist is for the people. So that always should be in the forefront. But yeah, ultimately, I agree. I will say this: when we realize that all these factors take a place, I do think in the midterms and moving forward, there's a very strong chance that Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to lose. Well, obviously, Donald Trump hopefully will be gone in 3 years.
Right.
And we know MAGA is more than likely going to lose unless they try to like gerrymander everything. But
Right.
let's say we live in a sane world where they just lose, and okay, Democrats start getting it, and then maybe they win presidency in 2028. But are we going to learn our lesson? Is this going to happen again when it comes to Donald Trump? People also were very dissatisfied with Bush, for example. So you can't allow this to happen again. So you got to set a different precedent and realize what you got to do. And that's why the value of like proper, I'm going to use the word proper, media outlets, entertainers, I don't know what you want to call it, but we need a different type of media like landscape to really battle against all the misinformation, all the narratives, manipulation, the focus on money over actual factual information. So that's what we need. For you, when you're looking for this new kind of media landscape, what are you looking for? What did you want to see from that type of media platform?
Gosh, what a great question. There's something that started going through my head as you were talking, and it'll work into this. It will play into this. The thing that occurred to me is that we haven't talked about, you just put it in quotation marks, the algorithm, right? We
Yeah,
haven't really discussed that ultimately we do this to ourselves. We end up putting ourselves into echo chambers because we appreciate that. We want to be in echo chambers. We don't want to see news that's going to challenge us. We don't want to see news that could possibly change our beliefs. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The way that our mind works, the way our conscious and subconscious work together, that we don't have to talk about. But to answer your question, these algorithms, they want to draw us in and keep us watching or reading or whatever, but they want to keep us consuming information. And they will do that by feeding you information that you want to watch. I mean, which, makes some sense, but that means it's always similar. So when I've looked at, I guess, alternative media outlets, that's why I have started looking toward, some of the smaller social media networks. Like I'll bring up Blue Sky again, and I bring it up because no algorithm. You do have to opt into things, but they're like just general streams. Like I have I don't remember the word they use for it now, but I'm on a stream that's just scientific. So when I want to look at science news, I just scroll over to my scientific, that scientific stream. It doesn't make a difference if somebody who is conservative or somebody who is liberal has done that. If it's gotten into the stream, I'm going to see it. And I think we have no choice but to consume opinions we don't like. Otherwise, we can never learn. We can never move past I hate this president and therefore I'm going to vote the opposite party next year. We have to be able to see the full effect of what's going on. And I think that would be my answer is ultimately something that has no algorithm, something for which there is no reward in confirming your own biases. What did you think? What do you think on that? Or actually, what other ones do you look at? You said informed. What else?
Informed is more of like a media, like media service. The best way to put it, where it just gives you information. I mean, for the most part, I mean, if you consider YouTube social media platform, which I just use to watch stuff, I will say I use Twitter too, but that's more so to kind of keep my eye on things. I do not like being on Twitter, but I kind of have to because that's where everything is going on. Obviously, I do post on Blue Sky and all the other normal ones. Post my all my stuff. But if I had a preference, like if I wasn't in my current political space, I prefer not to be on social media. Period. My thing is, I've been coming up with this idea of the last couple weeks. I'm like, I usually am able to see the nuance, the pros and cons for a lot of things, and I can see the pros of an algorithm in terms of for a consumer, and especially for the business because it obviously tailors hyper focused content and products to an individual. I think the algorithm, and I would be very curious to have a conversation with an expert in this. I think the algorithm is more of a net negative than a net positive from everything that I've seen. I don't think the idea of continuously giving someone what they want is a good thing. I mean, that the whole premise of greed completely debunks that claim. That's why it's a deadly sin, right? It's a problem. And it's an issue if you just you're scrolling on TikTok algorithm is deadly. But if you're scrolling on a video and you just stood there for a couple seconds and it's oh, you just weren't really paying attention. Now you just keep on getting videos for that. And you're bro, I don't really care about this. Why am I?
Right.
And then obviously you spoke about echo chambers and how terrible that is. And how people are constantly reinforcing things consistently to each other. And it just becomes more and more difficult to step out of that in the first place. What's good, Danny?
Hey, how are you, Riddell? I'm sorry about being late.
No.
I greatly apologize for that. I got caught up in a family dinner.
It is what it is. I will say Ami has a hard out in an hour. So if anything, I might stay 20 more minutes with you if you want to share anything that we've already discussed. But basically what I'm on right now is I do have issues with the algorithm. I do think it's problematic for humans in general. And the bigger conversation that I probably would go from here then is for the new media landscape that we're talking about, what would you want to see specifically? Not the platform, no algorithms, objective, nuance, those are fine things. But in order to really make it pop, you need the talent. You need the talks person. You need the individual. You need the face to the platform. That's how these get big. The platforms don't get big by themselves. They need the people to make them big.
Yeah.
So what would you want to see out of individuals trying to create this new media landscape?
I mean, I would like to really see more of these channels become, how should I put it? Like really stick to facts, not spreading fake news, not doing a whole lot of sensationalist content. I don't think that helps at all with how we with our debate culture. And I think it's well, I don't think it has partially led to these increasing divides within the United States and just around the world in general. So I'd like to see more platforms really take really try to control that, especially with the fake news. I want to see places like Facebook doing that. I want to see YouTube doing a better job. And I think YouTube is one of the better ones, in all honesty. There is a way to report fake news, for example. So that would be one major place to start, because it seems out of control almost. Yeah. And this is something that governments also, I think, are going to need to have to consider more in the future. And we are seeing that a little bit with the UK, for example, putting strict bans on people under the age of 16, I believe, from being able to use things like Facebook, as well as you're even seeing that in Australia. And that's all pretty important. So more, I would say, monitoring, and more or less.
Can I follow up on something you said, Riddell?
Yeah.
Because Danny, I like where you're going. I think I agree it would make sense to balance this in some way. At the beginning of our conversation, Riddell, you had mentioned, or we had started talking about the purpose of a media outlet, which is to sell advertising, right? I mean, it exists for selling advertising. This is marketing 101 thing. Because they want to sell advertising, they need to keep you on, and that's why an algorithm exists. How best to keep you on so that you can sell the greatest amount of ads? Just feed you the things you want to look at. I'm not saying I'm not saying it should be illegal, but that's why an algorithm exists. You had said, Riddell, you said it's probably a net negative. It is absolutely a net negative, because the whole purpose of an algorithm is not to give you better information, but to keep you watching so that the media outlets can sell more advertising. That's its purpose. That's why a media outlet would have an algorithm. And I think the only way that we're going to get rid of things like fake news or whatever is you have no algorithm whatsoever. No, you don't want to have to report that kind of thing. You want an outlet that just doesn't get, you want a journalist who just doesn't get recommended because it's bad information. Anyway, go ahead, Danny.
No, I completely agree, and it's addictive. That's my last thing I wanted to add on. It's addictive for the mind. Like, you keep wanting to scroll through,
That's its whole purpose. I mean, it's to keep you there so that they can show you more advertisements. So it would be great to see that go away altogether. The only thing is that now pretty much you're left with a newspaper, and literally it's, this is why we started making new media outlets, because people opened up a newspaper and went, I don't care. And I guess I do need to take off in a couple of moments here, but I would say that what we need ultimately is not a change in media outlets. It's not a new one, not a purple. I'm going to love purple, obviously, but we don't need a purple media outlet. What we need is to train people, as you mentioned, Riddell, train people not to fall for some of the stupid things that they do. Train people how to use these tools so that they don't build their own echo chambers, so that they don't, end up never learning anything about any other topic than, what Trump wore to the $200 million ballroom that he's building. We don't need that kind of stuff. So I think that's ultimately the answer is as much as I hate to say it, because this is supposed to be a big conservative value here, personal responsibility. Keep track of what you're looking at.
No, I do think that's very valuable. That's why I always preach that their public education is very important, or education in general is very important to me, and that one aspect that should be included is media literacy and understanding how to navigate the internet, and especially to help parents understand that you should not just give your child a tablet and allow them to do whatever the hell they want. So there's a lot of problems with society and consumers, and they feed into the issue as well. It's also the job of the government to give them the tools and give them the knowledge to know that they need to learn this stuff and they need to know this stuff. So there's a two-way responsibility in that retrospect. I don't think we're getting it in this administration, but we should definitely get it in a future administration on the value of these things to adapt. And we're going to see that even tenfold. I would argue even more so when it comes to AI, because people are now thinking AI, which could also be tailored to your needs, but even more so. And people are going to think that is more truthful, more factual. And there's already issues with AI is that it's too agreeable or it spreads misinformation. And those two things are exactly what's wrong with current social media. That the too agreeable part is the algorithm gives you what you want. And the misinformation part is obviously the misinformation on social media that made people believe lies said by Donald Trump consistently. And if AI is doing that with a higher level of trust people are already giving it, that's gonna damage humanity beyond a shadow of a doubt, like even more so than the social media ever could. So we need to adapt to this new technology. We'll see if we ever get there. I think with that said, the personal responsibility thing is good. And I do think I understand the aspect of like it being like a newspaper and just information they don't care about. We also need to teach people how to be two things, in my opinion. One, more relatable / entertaining. Just be a normal person. Like people forget how to be normal people. They are some weirdos on the internet. I'm like, bro, you sound like a robot. I don't know what you talking about. You're boring. Like, come on. Like there is some interesting. I'm sure you have some fun things. I'm sure you nerd out over X, Y, and Z. I nerd out stuff. Like I have a One Piece flag in my background. So I know that's not easy for everybody, but like help people be like informative, but also relatable, human, entertaining, not like a robot. That goes double for politicians too. For like, there's a reason why people like Donald Trump, not because he says good things, but he sounds like he says good things. Yeah. So that's a strategy. Or the other aspect, which the far left has mastered, that's why they get people to become so radical. You need to be able to resonate with their emotions and their humanity way better. Because when you throw out facts and you just say these things in a very bland, monotone way, or you just say things in a very like nonchalant way, people are not going to really understand the ramifications of what actually is being talked about. So these are just other techniques that people if you're going to try to create a better landscape than MAGA and the far left, these are things you need to do, because both those sides have one or both those techniques and able to like really grab people with it.
I agree with you. Thank you for that response on everything I said. I am going to drop out. I'm going to say, Danny, good seeing you. And Radell, thank you for the invitation again.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
But no, it's no, definitely. And there's also kind of what you were saying with AI being agreeable, not just with politics. We're also seeing an effect now where there are people who are using AI instead as their therapist, which is leading to problems.
Yes.
Because it will almost always give you an agreeable answer. And while there's not a problem, of course, to consult AI, you should be also saying, okay, I need to talk to my therapist or get a real human therapist to talk to as well, because the AIs might just be, you may not be sharing enough information with it. It's like, yeah, okay. Or it might be, as you said, too agreeable in the first place, which is, of course, a major issue.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. There are so many things we gotta do to kind of deal with the AI evolution that people are already becoming victims of it. I guess so. Overall, Danny, we were kind of touching upon like how MAGA became MAGA, kind of optimizing certain techniques from the far left in terms of how you to demonize a group of people, and then how they are able to maximize media attention because of being both entertaining and utilizing that level of entertainment with controversy and crazy things and demonization techniques to push misinformation to make people believe lies like and into like a cult of personality. And we discussed how the far left had these techniques but for a small percentage, and that actually played a part into why MAGA was able to do what they're doing, because they were able to convince white men, which is the majority of the population, and how the far left ultimately their techniques just don't appeal to the average person as well. So I guess the kind of broaden it, we're discussing what the new media landscape should be doing. We talked about different techniques, algorithms, the strategies of individual personalities. Is there anything else you want to touch upon in terms of like what this new media landscape needs to do to battle against these two landscapes and prevail and creating this new version that is actually beneficial to people?
Yeah. Well, I would say I agree with what Ami was saying. We need to get rid of a lot of these algorithms or retailor them so they're one not as addictive. That would be beneficial in a lot of different ways because I mean, last thing you want is to be wasting your entire time on like the internet or something. Um, but the other beneficial aspect about that would be to make it harder for a lot of these very far right and far left people to uh, spread their ideologies. Um, and you look into some of these people, they're very sketchy, anyways, like Alex Jones or whoever. But the other thing I would say, and I do agree with what the UK is trying to do here, is trying to limit the amount of young people that get on these sites. Oftentimes, we saw this in college, especially. I knew a lot of kids with these very radical right opinions who felt like they were kind of outsiders at Cornell. And then they spent a lot of their time on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter hearing from these right wing commentators that made them feel like they were the victims because they are white in some way. And and a lot of that starts in high school for a lot of these boys, especially. It's like at the age of 16, I feel like it's when people start to delve into politics. And that would, in my opinion, at least help with preventing young people from being brainwashed by these psychophants effectively into believing their BS because it is concerning. And I know I'm probably going to sound like a little bit of like a prude here, but it is about protecting kids, a lot of this. So that's one thing I think we need to do. And again, the other thing is I don't think there should be anything wrong with these companies taking more or being incentivized more so to remove content that is purposefully distorting the truth. And I think people like Tim Pool, for example, with him and that whole Russia scandal last year, where he's getting like $100,000 a month from some sketchy organization. I think they should be brought before the FBI. I think they should be subpoenaed and like asked, like, what are you doing? Because you're going around spreading misinformation. I think the government should genuinely get involved, because if you're spreading misinformation to try and lead to an anti-democratic movement, if you ask me, that is call for the government to get involved, because it's in a way as if you are representing a genuine threat. And that might sound anti-free speech, but I don't know. It of course depends on how serious you are about these ideas.
Yeah, throw in Tucker Carlson in there as well, to be honest.
Tucker Carlson, yes. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that dude. So I've had the conversation in terms of children and social media before. I think the thing that I said is that why don't you just create a social media platform for teenagers and for kids that is completely in a different uh, space from adults? Because I do know that I do think that there is going to be that want to for that community, which is like that is. But I mean, to be fair, you could argue that they can get that with like stuff like Discord or like Telegram or WhatsApp potentially. Who knows? There needs to be a limitation ultimately,
Yeah.
for sure. Especially since so many parents do not know how to ease kids into social media. They don't even understand social media themselves. So at that point, you got to step in because it can be so dangerous. Um, where kids with that are ignorant, have no perspective, trying to find solace, and they allow technology from people that they don't know to dictate who they become. And that's a problem. That's a big problem.
Oh, definitely.
So I'm with you there. The other aspect about it too is the government involvement, and you touched upon it, freedom of speech. I've heard this before. I think I heard it from Destiny, and I've thought about it before. Like the freedom of speech rules do not apply on social media the same way it does in general, because I think people misunderstand a lot of the freedom of speech thing is to battle against the government, not private institutions.
Yeah.
So there probably needs to be a serious and deliberate conversation of how much harm, like, for example, COVID misinformation about vaccines has done.
Yeah.
How much harm the election, like the lies about the election being stolen, what was the result? January 6th. How much harm the, like, sure, be pro Palestine, but the anti-Jewish rhetoric to the point where people are killing innocent Jewish people in America. Or I don't know if you saw this, but this 24-year-old told went on our Instagram story and told someone to attack a Jewish school of students. It's like
Yeah.
real consequences for rhetoric is now seeping out into the real world. And there probably needs to be some level of culpability to these platforms that is allowing this to propagate to thousands, millions of people.
Oh, definitely. Well, I think I think in terms, I think one way a productive way, maybe that wouldn't completely call into question First Amendment issues for the United States, of course. Other places it's less of a problem, but would be to, especially when there's like these crimes, like the people who killed those Jewish students after at a class in the U.S., like by throwing Molotov cocktails at them. Um, I think what should be looked at is who the perpetrators were and where they got radicalized. And if they were being radicalized through different social media sites, I would say that it should be that the government should be able to, like, say to effectively these sites, like, hey, these guys who committed murder, we're watching your videos. We're going to call you in to talk to you about what you're saying on here. And we want to look into if you're intentionally trying to radicalize people effectively, like open up a case against them. Because if that could be proven, then I mean, I don't see how that's inherently different from maybe even. I really don't see how that's different from like being a member of like the Klan, for example, and encouraging this sort of violence. And it's usually people on, again, the far right committing these violent acts. We're also seeing it from people on the far left, like with pro-Palestine groups. Obviously, that being a big theme here in the United States. Doing that, committing violent acts, killing people, or as you said, encouraging people to attack a Jewish school. Definitely encouraging people to attack a Jewish school. That I feel like you could immediately go off and arrest that person. I saw there's an article back in 2020 actually where a woman posted on Twitter as part of the Black Lives Matter movement that she was quote unquote going to kill police officers the next day, and she immediately was arrested for that. And the reason why they said that they arrested her is she said, "I am going to," which is an action word instead of "I want to." We talked about this also in college, but saying like "I want to kill somebody" is technically freedom of speech because you're merely expressing a desire. But I think definitely looking at the rhetoric of these people should be something that the government's doing, and I have a feeling they're already doing it. But keeping that in mind, because if we're getting a bunch of crazy people on the internet who are going to go off and attack government institutions or whatever because of what they're seeing from some guy like Hassan or somebody like Tucker Carlson or whatever, like, yeah, then I think you should look into whether these people are creating homegrown terrorists, genuinely.
So it is very tough because you have to find the line, and we all recognize that line is can be difficult unless you like say you're going to do something deliberately, as you mentioned, because this kind of reroutes to other conversations on what inspires people and the level of accountability to the inspiration of the terrible action. Like I don't remember when this happened, but I remember someone did a mass shooting and they said they watched like Candace Owens and they watched the Daily Wire, and then I think they said they've watched like other like left wing content creators too. I don't really remember, but at that point, and when we look at them, are we going to say because they were influenced somehow, should they have a level of accountability? And there, when it comes to tone and rhetoric and repeated rhetoric and the level of energy you give, like there are so many factors you could play into what someone's intention are, but most people can't point that out, and even some people who can point it out can be wrong. So those things are very difficult to determine. I do think if we could find a very viable, apparent, and obvious threshold that can be clearly defined in every single circumstance, I probably would be more like, instead of the government forcing these private companies, there could be some, it could be more of a, maybe a more of a allowed civil case, because these companies, they don't care about people's dying. They care about losing money.
Yeah.
So that's what you got to attack. I think most of these probably will, unless it's like obviously like the company trying to incite something, a lot more civil cases should be permitted for these, especially when there's intention behind it. And that will force these companies like, all right, we got to make sure that this stuff doesn't happen on our platform. We got to make sure that people are not spreading misinformation about the vaccines, causing people not to take the vaccines and dying from it.
Yeah.
Like, it needs to have a very clear defined line, and the government should definitely permit a lot of people to, even the government itself, to sue these companies for not ensuring that they are not doing their best interest of society at that point.
Yeah, I would argue. I think maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there already has been a case, but I'm surprised that like a platform like Facebook, for example, hasn't been sued yet for stuff that's been put on their platform that could have been considered. What's the word? That could have been considered like radicalizing. To cause Facebook to really, jump in and care more about this. And I think that's going to happen in the future. I think that'll happen within maybe even the next 10 years, where there will be an event like a terrorist attack, and we'll be able to point back to, okay, this guy was in this Facebook group. Facebook allowed this to happen. And then you'll see Facebook get brought in to the courtroom and basically then have to face, you guys are allowing terrorist rhetoric, whatever the attack is, far right, left wing, religious motivated, to spread on your platform, and you guys need to get on top of this. And there has been some steps in that direction. There have been times where, of course, Facebook was brought into Congress. I remember specifically Mark Zuckerberg being there because he was being accused of being anti-conservative, which was kind of dumb. But so I could see this happening again in the future, though, where social media companies will start to be held more accountable for this. I think Twitter is most likely to maybe have it done first, given all the neo-Nazi garbage you can find on there so easily.
Yeah, yeah. Just got to determine the lines at the end of the day, because we don't want to expand it to, you know, the whole video game conversation, for example. And people may even expand that to TV. I mean, I'm already seeing people try to use One Piece, the manga, as a means, as inspiration to free yourself from the government. And I'm like, bro, this is an anime. What are you doing? I don't like. Someone in my comment section recently, I forget what I was talking about. I think I was talking about the government. That's all I know. And they said, you have that One Piece flag in the background. Did you know that they're I think he said, did you know they're communist? And I'm like, bro, it's an anime.
Yeah.
It's an anime.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, there's definitely a problem with people who, I mean, you also see that with the Punisher, for example. Even though that, and I've never watched the show. I've watched clips from it at least, and I do think it's genuinely a good show. People look at that and are like, okay, this is how I need to be with criminals, and it's like, okay, it's a TV show. It's not trying to do that. The other problem is, though, and that is this is a good discussion to have. Is there are already disturbed people who are already going to engage in that type of media, and whether that inspires them or not. I understand what you're saying, where that becomes a problem. Like, can we bring in someone like Zuckerberg if there were to be this theoretical terrorist attack that happens, and can we hold him accountable for not doing anything about this? The one thing I would say, however, that's different is with art, video games, that sort of media. It's not inherently allowing for a conversation to happen, like right beneath your eyes. You could argue, though, that a social media site, they are allowing conversations on them. They are allowing people to discuss politics on them. And it should also be up to that company to make sure that people are not using their site to get radicalized, in effect. Whereas with One Piece or a video game like, let's say, Grand Theft Auto, which has come under tons of scrutiny over the 20 years in existence, it's like it really isn't trying to encourage you to go kill police officers or drive into civilians in real life. Of course, there are people who play it and then go off and do it, but there's nothing founded where they're trying to even encourage that sort of behavior, so to speak. But on a social media site, you could make the argument like, okay, well, they were using your guys' stuff. They would meet every day to plan this, and you guys didn't do anything. That's where I think you could. They're using your site as a tool, in effect. Let's go with that. It's a tool.
I think to ensure that there's more of a way to associate them with the growth of wrongful rhetoric is that there must be honestly, I don't see why there isn't, but I think there should be a law put in place that every social media platform, and you could put a threshold. No, maybe you put a threshold. Maybe it's like once you have like 1 million users on that social media platform, you are required to have a fact-checking system. At this point, we got to recognize, and with the usage of AI, it's been helping a lot of people. MAGA is getting so mad that Grok keeps on proving how they keep on lying constantly. Oh, man. But then we have Elon Musk, who realizes that the Grok is proving his side wrong all the time, so he constantly has to update it. Okay, buddy. All right, sure. Yeah, that's not corrupt as hell. But ultimately, that just allows more of a responsibility to ensure that wrongful, dangerous rhetoric can either be removed or fact checked if it doesn't hit the threshold of like absolute danger. Um, because social media is a place to bring people together, but you don't want to use it to like harm people. I think there's never been a goal from these big platforms that they do this to harm people, obviously, because they want to profit all these off these people.
Yeah.
So to make sure it's as safe and as honest as possible, then a fact checking system should be basically mandated at this point.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think I mean, I have looked at this because I was kind of looking into for a little bit of work, I was looking at trying to be like a fact checker for different sites, and you can't do that really. But there are AI companies that are trying to create AI fact checking systems that they then sell to other companies like Google, for example. Although Google is their own AI, but that could be an example. So they're basically trying to work as like a third party AI fact checker to make sure that misinformation can immediately be shot down. So I know from that small personal experience that this is an industry that's growing because I think people realize that social media is going to continue expanding, and social media sites are going to want to have they're not going to want to run into legal issues and at the end of the day they're not going to want to gain a reputation, especially among investors, for being like, oh yeah, we just go off and support people spreading tons of misinformation and racist rhetoric. I mean, there's a reason why sites like 4chan are gone now. There is a reason why Facebook, on the other hand, will try to maintain a good public image because they want their stocks to keep going up. They want to make money off this. And it's not, and we saw this with Elon Musk. Spreading hate, spreading misinformation is not profitable. He did that and his company lost money.
Yeah.
And it's funny because apparently there were discussions about should we replace him as CEO, which is absolutely hilarious to think that this guy getting involved in politics has caused people that work for his own company to be like, maybe we need to get rid of this dude and put someone else in charge who's not insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess point being is spreading misinformation isn't going to make you rich. It might for a little bit, but not in the long run. So
yeah. I mean, unless you're the Trump family who got $3 billion over there in the last couple of months. It's like, okay, all right, well, money out of politics, unless you're a Trump. Then,
yeah, no. Well, I also question, when or if I would concede them getting brought into court once this administration's done with, and maybe that money will go away quickly. Who knows? We'll see what happens there, but no, it's messed up.
yeah, it's kind of wild. To kind of touch upon we'll make this the last thing. So to be a little bit more particular, like, who are some content creators, or what are some things that you want to see some people to come together? Because we realize that obviously the Daily Wire is a project that was put in place to help, and it actually had a lot of influence, but there's nothing there that's really like super big for the kind of more nuanced spaces. I would say obviously Daily Wire, MAGA's Unhinged, Candace Owens, big Unhinged, Tucker Carlson, big Unhinged, Alex Jones, big Unhinged. Joe Rogan has been kind of becoming a little bit less unhinged recently. I'll give him some credit there. He had some pretty good voices on there. But he's like, you never know. He's a wild card. He kind of goes in his own phase. He's definitely not leaning on the Democrat side, but at the very least, he's a open canvas. But independent media aside, we got the Young Turks. I mean, the Young Turks are unhinged at this point. Now, I'm good off them, bro. I'm good off them. Hassan is unhinged. So it's like a lot of them are just unhinged, but they're very big, very popular. So what type of characters would you want to see come together? What type of content would you want to see come together to create this new media space?
One YouTuber I follow quite a bit. His name is Jake Bro. He does a lot of like following the war in Ukraine as well as following American politics. He started going more there. I like him because he's not unhinged. He is also he does a lot of donations. He's created a very positive community. It seems like he definitely complains a lot about Trump and Musk and all those guys, but he never says anything like go off and kill these guys. Never says anything along those lines that I feel like we could hear from some of the other people. It's always like him saying like this is really bad, but we're gonna get through this, and he kind of explains his process about it, etc. So he's a guy I like to see. I like seeing a lot. Another person I really like from the U.S. is this guy Ryan Macbeth. He does more military stuff, talking about military technology, etc. But he will also do like fact checking information about the military, and has a very good community. He tries to get rid of any misinformation about different. He actually tries really hard to fight back against misinformation regarding the war in between Israel and Palestine, the war between Russia and Ukraine, as well as the U.S. military in general. Because there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle trying to talk about stuff. And he's like, no, that's not how it works. Like, believe me, I was a major, so on and so forth. So I really like him. And he's worked with Jake Bro a few times. And then finally, in terms of another YouTuber, I'm trying to think of just standard talking. Oh, I really like Midas Touch. Midas Touch as well. They're these, progressive Democratic YouTubers, but they're not as unhinged as like the Young Turks or Hassan or anyone like that. They're in a way they might sound a little too much like boomers, but I'm not going to lie. There's a good thing there for that. They're older guys, and I think I honestly do believe that them being older is a bit in their benefit, where they're maybe more level-headed about how things work, instead of just being like, oh yeah, we need to go grab a weapon or whatever, we need to go break stuff, and they're not talking about that, and I really like their program. Yeah. I don't know. How about you? What do you who would you like to see more of?
So there are a couple of content creators that I see. I will never lie to the people listening to this podcast. I do watch Destiny, but I criticize Destiny's behavior all the time. He is way too toxic. I thought his joke about the Texas kids was fucking stupid. And he needs to keep his dick in his pants. But overall, in terms of like what he says, I pretty much agree with a lot of it. We kind of fall in line in there. So if he just fixes attitude, that'd be good. But there's no denying he's growing his own influence. He was on a CNN for an interview recently, which shows that he's entering the mainstream. And he's a part of this tour called the Unfuck America Tour, which I'm a huge advocate for, because they are trying to resonate or replicate the Charlie Kirk model, which, no denying, even though Charlie is a cuck, he is very effective in his ability to inform and spread the message of the MAGA cult. So shout out the Unfuck America Tour. Shout out Destiny when he's not being fucking unhinged. I do like Hutch, Pondering Politics, like the people in Live and Learn, even though I thought the socialism arc was kind of unhinged, but it is what it is. I do like my guy Wick. I do like Counterpoints. Trying to see like more big ones that I've been Seeing that's not unhinged, or I don't really watch unhinged people. I will say I'll put them. They're not a political figure, but I will be one of the few people that defends them, because I've defended them before on my platform. Jubilee has done more good than bad in terms of conversations they've had.
Okay.
They have introduced so many types of conversations that people never would have gotten. So I know people got upset because of the whole Mediasan versus the fascist thing, which I do think actually ended up being a good thing because people realize the fascist regime is growing in MAGA. So this is not us saying, "Oh yeah, they're fascist." No, we just showed you they're fascist. We just showed you a fascist. So now they're being more honest about it. So I thought that was a good thing ultimately. But I will defend Jubilee because they introduce very valuable conversations that need to be shown to the public, or at the very least need to happen in general. Their format could be better sometimes, like especially the 20 versus 1. I don't like the red flag system that they currently have. I don't really like that, but I think they're good.
Now, just to kind of touch real quickly on that, do you think Jubilee purposefully knew those people were as unhinged fascist as they were, or do you think they thought they were regular Trump conservatives, or maybe what they thought were regular Trump conservatives?
Well, the title was far right, so I do think they kind of knew they were far right. Now, did they know they were Nazis? Hard to say. You have to remember this guy had a normal job before he came to Jubilee, so
Yeah.
he obviously hit it very well. And a couple of the personalities that were there have been on other like Republican shows. They said stupid shit, but they said like normal stupid MAGA shit. So I don't think like they knew that he was a Nazi necessarily. Um, I think they just knew that they were very, very, very devout, like far right people.
Okay. Yeah, because that's the big conversation now, or what I've seen from it with people saying Jubilee should be shut down or whatever. Is the concern is are they promoting far right content?
How
Um,
would they be promoting something where everybody's cooking him? Like,
yeah, I think the
there's
fear. I think the fear is that even if they're cooking them, I mean, you saw this in the comment section. There were people who like agreed with them and were saying like, "Yeah, I really like this," but they're mostly responding to the other comments, and they were getting largely cooked in the comments as well, which was good to see. Like these guys who were backing up the Nazi dude, for example, maybe got 20 likes and like for being like, "Ah, well, I think you guys are a bunch of libtards or whatever." But then the original commenter would have like 1,000 thumbs up on YouTube. So I think that definitely shows that. I think the concern is just like, okay, well, what if this gets somebody to look more into this and they end up starting to agree with it? But I feel like on their part, it was more of we knew you guys were really, really Trumpish. We did not know you guys were though, like arm up at a 45-degree angle Trumpish. So yeah, we didn't know. We thought you guys were just conservative.
at the same time though, like when it comes down to how people perceive Democrats, I don't know about you, but I feel like especially coming into the like the last couple of elections, people perceive Democrats as like people who want to trans your kids, people who want immigrants to take your jobs, people who think that white people can't be racist. Like everything, all this stuff is stupid, like very clearly, and most people don't agree with this. But that was the perception. So I think there is value to like when I call Trump a fascist and authoritarian. Of course, I can back up everything that I'm saying, all that stuff. But having just very clear and definitive proof of his base and people applauding this type of rhetoric, I think does wonders to showcase to like the average person that oh shit, yo, this guy and his people are insane.
Yeah.
Like this is not okay. I just don't believe that ignoring these people and hoping they go away has ever proven to be effective, considering MAGA won the election. And when it comes down to it, the best way to challenge a lot of these is to challenge them in an effective, informed way, because facts will always prevail. I don't believe in showcasing something that will never get pushback. Like, I think that's stupid beyond. But I think Mehdi Hassan was capable enough to push back every single one of them. So I think that was fine.
Yeah. No, it was. It was. He did a very good job at it and really just showed how uneducated these individuals are, which is why he was such a good host to have on. Um, and I do hope that they continue picking good people like that. If they're going to have these far right people on to like get destroyed effectively, because it would it would make sense if you're going to have these people on, then like shoot down every single one of their arguments, because they really don't have that many arguments at the end of the day. You have to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, a lot of I get the idea of showcasing this I think it's not about people getting inspired by him, but him just growing as a personality. I think that is the most negative part about it. The fact that he got like $30,000 after his job fired him from donations is fucking wild. But at the same time, now everybody knows who he is. So his reputation moving forward he'll be ostracized from society, kind of like Nick Fuentes. Like, Nick Fuentes still gets money somehow, but we all recognize that guy is a pariah of society, and nobody likes him. No business likes him. So he's screwed for the rest of his life by himself, isolated.
Once he falls out of the spot. Oh, that guy Connor, who they had on there, he completely screwed himself even more than Nick Fuentes did. He won't be socially tolerated in like any country. He was never a well-known like personality at all. At least Nick Fuentes was. Nick Fuentes, though, I think he will kind of die down as he gets older, and people just kind of like start going away from him, and maybe even we see more moderation going into media spaces. Increasing as well, which is a bigger topic, and that's partially what we talked about today. But Nick Fuentes, at least, if he is smart, he'd go invest that money and then live off of it, because I don't think he's going to get a legitimate job for the rest of his life. He's going to have to live off of what he's made so far. This dude, Connor, I don't know, maybe he could become a construction worker. Like, I don't think they'd really care about that. But he's definitely not going to get a job in politics. I don't even know if MAGA would touch him, given the fact he's like, oh yeah, I do consider myself a Nazi. And he said that online. It's like, if they bring him on, it might be too much. Like, okay, well, do we want to give the Democrats ammo? You know? And if they do,
it's that dude. I don't even know if he would be a construction worker. Then he would have to work next to Hispanics. Wow, he would hate that. He would hate that.
He actually might get his ass kicked also, but he'll have to do something that he's definitely not going to have like a normal white collar job, I think, is what I should say. Like, he completely messed himself up in that sense, because the second someone figures that out, they're going to contact that business. And just to give you an idea of that, the guy who wrote, this is kind of slightly off topic, but not really, and then I'll finish up my talk. The guy who wrote the anarchist cookbook. He's dead now, but he was associated a lot with like Columbine, because the Columbine shooters used that book to build these bombs that they made. And even though he says he did not encourage it, that him writing that as a teenager followed him the rest of his life, and he kept getting fired from different jobs at schools because people would find out, oh, you have this guy working here. This guy wrote the anarchist cookbook, and they Columbine shooters use this. So you want a guy who provided instructions to school shooters to be working at your school. And he said it haunted him all the way even into France. He had to move to France to get away from it. And even in France, they were constantly getting complaints from parents. So I think that's what's going to happen to Connor. You're going to have this guy. You're going to have a dedicated group of anti-fascists haunt this guy the rest of his life, and he's not going to be able to get rid of it, get away from them. But
And that's a great thing right there.
I think it is too. I think it is too.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if because we know that there are terrible people out there. Like, for example, the only reason why we found out how like bad someone like Andrew Tate is because of all the exposure he got.
Oh yeah.
And now he fled to America. Now he's off the grid and he's never going online. Like, bro, we need to lock that boy up. Sometimes exposure is good to reveal how terrible people are.
Yeah, no, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. I mean, some of these terrible people are cocky and they're idiots, and they are happy with putting it out in public. And if you do that, it doesn't end well for you. Eventually it'll catch up to you. Might be a good grift for a couple of years, 5 years or so, but it will catch up to you.
100%.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me on, Riddell.
Yeah, no problem. Glad you were able to make it.
I apologize for being late.
Hey, it is what it is. Me and Ami had a good conversation that we extended it to expand the conversation, which I do think was effective here. But ultimately, hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. I do think we kind of articulated pretty well in terms of like the current media landscape and what we need to do to really challenge the current status quo. And hopefully we can do that. Hopefully we can create a coalition that is able to really make a name for itself moving forward. With that said, hopefully you guys think this podcast can be one of those media entities. Feel free to let me know. Rate the podcast 5 stars if you enjoyed. And of course, if you guys are commenting in the YouTube videos or any of the other clips, I mean, if you say something stupid, I'm just going to call you a bot or not respond. But if you say something that is very inquisitive and actually a good critique or something very interesting, then I will respond in good faith. Everybody else, I will just troll. I'm just telling you the honest truth. I will troll. You know, I'm not. Danny's a better person now, I'm sure.
I've trolled these guys. Other YouTube channels, so.
Hey, man. With that said, hope you guys enjoyed. You have a good one. Take care and peace.